Good morning, Tim.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I think this is our first morning national Zoom call we've done. So I'm still waking up a little bit, but feeling good. Had a Tower
Well,
Garden smoothie this morning.
so glad to have you here with us. I see that we've got folks jumping in. I'm going to give everybody just a couple of minutes to get logged on. I checked just before we got started, and there were those 360 some odd people who had registered. So I'm excited about that. I hope that a lot of these folks will be able to join us, live today. And those who aren't, they're going to get a follow-up email tomorrow with a little bit more information where they can go and view the webinar and see what we're doing. We're also going to share resources that we talk about today, both with our participants that are here with us live and those who are going to follow up with us a little bit later. So to get started, I'll just give a little bit of background on who I am and why I'm here. My name is Katie Maxwell, and I am a new member specifically to the Tower Garden team. While I've been with the Juice Plus company for a little over 5 years, my role has switched a little bit, and I am focused specifically on marketing activation for Tower Garden. So I started doing this back last summer, and I've just had a lot of fun with it. I love Tower Garden. I have grown on my own at home. I started out growing here in the office. I got my tower and I was like, I'm scared. And Steve's office was right down the hall. So I said, I'm going to grow my tower garden in the office so I can have some of that, expert help. And I have now switched and I'm growing at home. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today are just those common questions. And it's all questions that I have asked. And to be perfectly honest, I've asked them probably more than once because I forgot the first time that I asked them. But I love my job. I love Tower Garden. I love getting involved. I love hearing from other people that are growing, what's working well for them, what they're struggling with. And it's nice to know because I sometimes have the same questions. But what we did for today is kind of went to our customer care team here at the office and said, hey, look, what are those questions that you get all the time? What are the ones that you have to answer over and over? And rather than us just kind of sticking those out there, I was like, well, let's get an expert on. Let's ask Tim to join us and answer some of these questions and just help us out. So for those of you out there watching, Tim Blank, he has been with Tower Garden from the beginning. He is our Chief Technology Officer for Tower Garden and knows all of the things. I know many of you have heard from him, his background. He knows what he's talking about. I'm confident to say, like, he has all the answers, and he honestly loves, to talk about Tower Garden. He knows way more. When I ask a question, I not only get my answer, but I get the why behind it, which is fantastic. So to kick us off, I'm going to ask the first question, and then I'm going to feverishly take notes while you're answering the question and giving us a little bit of background, and we will follow up with any of the resources and information that you may use as props and anything that you may point us to, and send that out to everyone afterwards. So I will pop in and out of the conversation to keep asking those questions. But I'm going to go ahead in the essence of time, since we've only got about 45 minutes here, I'm going to go ahead and get started with those questions. And then we'll follow up at the end with just some kind of housekeeping things and, go from there. Are you ready?
Sure. I'm ready, but before you start, I just would love to say welcome everybody. Just love our thousands and thousands of people around the globe, within our tens of thousands, I should say, within our Tower Garden community around the globe. I've been a hydroponic gardener for 30 years, spent 12 years managing the hydroponic greenhouses at the land at Epcot Center for Walt Disney World Company. And this has just been my passion my whole adult life. I started to garden when I was young. And one of the things I've learned over the years I have a wife and 2 kids, and so many of us live busy lives. And I'm all about keeping gardening fun and simple. So everything that we're going to talk about today, I could probably talk, Katie, an hour on each subject, that, but I always love giving short, simple answers to keep what we're doing fun and simple. So you can really grow all of your own fruits and vegetables at home in these beautiful tower gardens you see behind me. So that's really what I'm going to try to focus on today, Katie.
All right. First question. Are Are you nervous?
Very nervous, very nervous.
First question. My lights aren't working. What do I need to do?
Yeah. So, all right, we'll start off. We live in this world today where, and I'm guilty of it too. We buy something and it seems like companies make it easier and easier for us to just kind of guess how it all goes together. And so at the Tower Garden Company, we've taken a lot of time and we've been here many years. Our technology has evolved over the years, and the way we communicate instructions has greatly improved over the years. And I think of the very first instruction booklet that Jessica and I developed for the Tower Garden back in 2006. It wasn't nearly as beautiful as the beautiful instruction booklet you all have today. And so one of the things about the lights, Katie, is that when you open up your light box, you have this beautiful, beautiful instruction booklet that just shows you step by step how to do it right. And I think this is so important for your first time because these are precision parts. I'll be talking about some more stuff later. So let's talk about things that maybe people do. And I think most of it is related to not looking at the instructions. Kind of, and I think men sometimes are worse than women at this. I can do this, grab it out of the box and start plugging and jamming things together. And there's a way to do it. So for example, let's say I get my light set up and I just have one bar that isn't on. Well, when we take our time here, here's the top of our Tower Garden home light. We have a little plug in there. Sometimes people don't always plug that in tight, or sometimes they actually forget to plug in all four. We've seen that. So definitely make sure you read your instructions and plug in those fittings correctly. And obviously we've had people put them on backwards so the lights are facing out, not in, and that's not going to do any good either. So that's one simple thing. If just one or two bars aren't working, that's probably what happened there. The next thing, if they're not working, are my lights even plugged in? Because they are high performance LED lights that have a good spectrum for healthy plant growth. They're low wattage. They don't use a lot of power, but they do require power. So we got to make sure they're plugged into a wall. Now, one of the things that I see is that, again, and this is usually from not reading the instructions most of the time, we have this awesome little pre-programmed state-of-the-art indoor-outdoor timer that comes with our Tower Garden home. And the bottom of it has these two outlets. And so the first thing people do is they plug the pump into one, and then they plug the grow lights into the other one. Now this timer is set to cycle on and off for the nutrients. It turns on for indoors, I think about 5 minutes on, 40 minutes off. Well, that does not work for lights. So the lights are supposed to be plugged into the wall, Katie. And that's usually one of, I think plugging it into the pump timer is the most common thing that I see. So the lights should be plugged directly into the wall. And we'll lift that little light kit up here. Now, people always ask me what I set my lights for. And there's just a very simple timer. You can almost not screw up with this. You push the pins out and they're on. When they're in towards the center, they're off. So I set my timer to turn on at 6 a.m. and it runs 18 hours all the way to midnight. And that really gives me some great growth. Like you see behind me here in my tower, my plants aren't stretched. They're doing really, really good. So plug this into your wall, set your timer if you can for 18 hours on. And I love it just to turn off at night. So, the house is dark, the plants sleep when I do. Now, let's say you've done all those things and there's the less than 0.1% chance that something there could be a manufacturer defect. We have a great, customer support number at towergarden.com. Call in. If you tried all those things and they didn't work, then call in and we'll be happy to help you or send you a replacement if something truly is wrong. But, like I said, Katie, 99.9% of the time, it's one of the biggest issues, just not simply even looking at the instructions of how to do it properly. So look at those instructions, and 18 hours on, you'll have great growth.
All right, so I've got my notebook. I have been taking notes. I have made a note that instruction booklet is key. So that's one of the things that we will include in the follow-up in the event that maybe someone out there has lost their instruction manual. It somehow got thrown away. They didn't hang on to it, whatever it may be. So we'll get a PDF version of that and include that in the resources, along with some just additional information about, making sure that you've got your lights set at the right time. Obviously, customer care number is out there in case these tips don't, fix the problem. If you've still got something going on with your lights, then obviously we want to help you out and get that taken care of. So, all right.
And by the way, I see I think I saw a question pop up that was, is it okay if I run my lights 16 hours or 14 hours? And the answer is absolutely. You could probably run them as low as 12 if you need that for some reason. But what I always do is give the best possible growing advice. In other words, I've got this prime real estate in my home. I've got a 24-inch footprint where I'm growing 32 plants vertically, and I want to get the most amount of food in the shortest amount of time. So I love that 18-hour on cycle. But yes, you can definitely do it as low as 12. You're just going to have slower growth, and maybe even on 12, your plants will be a little bit more stretched. So those are some good questions there.
Yeah, speaking of questions that are coming through for the panelists, for those of you out there who are asking the questions, I do want to let you know we see them and we have them here. It's we'll do our best to get to those questions as we can. We want to keep the flow going. And actually, this next question that I'm going to ask while you're answering that question, I'm going to switch over and respond to a few of these on the
okay.
Chat side of things.
Okay.
So don't be alarmed if my video goes away. I'm gonna do a little housekeeping over here on the side. But if we aren't able to acknowledge the questions that are popping up in here, if we just don't have time to get to everything, then we'll do our best to address those questions in the follow-up when we send that out. Hopefully it'll go out tomorrow, but definitely in the next couple of days. Okay, so next question, and this is one that I even continue to ask over and over. We get a lot of questions around like, okay, can I grow this? And where can I grow this? And well, what if I wanted to grow this? And so I'm one of those like, hey, I have a tower inside and a tower outside. So I will a lot of times I'll pop my head into Steve's office and say, hey, Steve, I think I want to grow this. Should I put this on the indoor tower or should I put this on the outdoor tower? So, he's constantly having to remind me, well, you've got your fruiting and your flowering plants, and then you've got your leafy greens. And yep. So can you tell us a little bit about the difference between the fruiting and flowering plants and leafy greens, and why we suggest growing what where?
That's a great one, Katie. Thank you. We get a lot of that. So we have two tower gardens. We have Tower Garden Flex, which we primarily use for outdoor growing, although Tower Garden Home, you can take out, if you like the design better, you can definitely take it outside. And especially there's a lot of you out there that have a small apartment, a balcony that faces south, and you want to use a little bit smaller unit. So the Tower Garden Home is fine outside. You just, again, wouldn't have the grow lights on there outside. But, with Tower Garden Flex outside, we're growing, just about any food crop imaginable. For Tower Garden Home, which is today, we're primarily answering questions and sharing tips about growing and indoor growing, because for much of the country, it's wintertime and we are all socked inside. And even those of you that live in my hometown of Orlando, Florida, or you're in Southern California or any of the coastal areas around the United States where it's great to grow outside. Many of you, have a backyard maybe that doesn't have sun, or you live in an apartment, and so a lot of our customers are growing in Tower Garden Home. So with Tower Garden Home, we are growing. We have that vertical condominium of plants, 32 plant sites, 16 large and 16 small to medium plants are growing up top in the penthouse suite. And so we've got a limited space indoors, and these lights, are going to be right about 24 to 30 inches wherever you set them. I don't like to set them way out here. I like the lights right up near where they're going to do the best job for the plants. And the the lights right here. So let me see where you can see. Let's look at this one here. So here's our light bar, lights going this way. So if those plants are growing out, I'm going to want to avoid large jungly crops because they're going to grow past the light. And one of the things is that we have so many people that have joined the Tower Garden community that are passionate about health and wellness. They might be a city dweller, and they have never grown a garden in their life. They can't even keep cactus alive. And Tower Garden turns black thumbs into green thumbs, and we're excited about that. So one of the reasons we suggest lettuces, leafy greens, and herbs is because they're going to stay within this area. They're going to be contained in front of that light. In fact, Katie is going to give you a link after. Steve and I, on a recent national Tower Garden Zoom call, did a very intensive Tower Garden 101, where we covered everything for indoor growing and everything for outdoor growing. We've answered almost every question I've seen pop up here on my monitor about pest and nutrients and the fun, simple ways to do it. Tower gardening is not complicated, and we've dialed it in. So if you want to learn more about how to grow and maintain your plants within this light, you can definitely check out that Tower Garden 101. It's posted on the Tower to Table Facebook group. I know a lot of you in that community are on this call. So some people do, there's a difference between flowering and fruiting. So all fruiting crops have to start with a flower that pollinates and turns into a fruit. But there's things like Katie mentioned, I know she has in her office, I've seen there in Memphis, she has some violas and some little petite edible flowers, and those would be fine. If you want to start growing, say, eggplant, pepper, tomato, cucumber, some of those things, let's say with all these lettuces and leafy greens and herbs that I'm growing here, I use these for salads and juicing and smoothie. And there's, I think, 20 some different crops here in total, herbs for cooking. Literally from transplant to your first harvest can be as little as a week, and you're already pinching growth to cook with. So the ROI, the return on investment, is really incredible for crops like this. And we all know that when we go to Whole Foods or whatever, that stuff has traveled 2 weeks from California or out of the country, and it doesn't have much flavor, and it just, so I really feel like these type of crops are great for the beginning gardener. Now, for those of you that are a master gardener or you've been gardening all your life, you'll understand that it's a very similar methodology to vegetable container gardening, where we are going to select petite varieties of tomato, petite varieties of eggplant. And then when they get on the tower, a gardener knows where to pinch those back. And he's going to kind of create almost a bonsai, a compact, stocky tomato bush, where he might put these lights out a little bit farther, but he's keeping that whole plant still within these lights. Because as soon as those vines are growing past the lights, they're not going to get light to grow, and then you're going to struggle with producing fruit, because your fruit load is dependent upon the volume of light. So we have all kinds of tower gardeners out there growing all kinds of fruiting crops. Follow those simple tips like I mentioned. Keep it petite within the light. And I always, as a rule of thumb, and you'll see this on most of my towers here, I like the breeze to get through my vertical garden, and I like the light to penetrate the canopy. So the light's getting into almost all these leaves. Your plant, when your plant gets so big that the light can't get in there and the air movement can't get in there, that's when you start to have some of the cultural problems. So hopefully, Katie, that's my given the time we have today, I think I'll leave that one at that, and hopefully I answered.
I do have one more question that that is related to this, and has also been mentioned over here, is the difference in the needs for the two different kind of plants. So if you have something that is like a fruiting plant, does it have impact on the water and nutrients that's in your tower versus the leafy greens?
My audio broke. What can you repeat that question?
Sure. Yeah. So is there an impact in how much water and nutrients is used between your leafy greens that you grow versus your fruiting plants?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I'm really glad you asked it. The Tower Garden Mineral Blend was really the world's first one-size-fits-all hydroponic / aeroponic nutrient solution. So we grow with this same mineral solution. We grow everything from and I'm talking not just at home, but on hundreds of commercial tower farms around the globe. We grow everything from beautiful beefsteak tomatoes to cucumbers. The primary thing, Katie, on that is that with that one size fits all growing solution, if you go to a hydroponic store today and you see in different chat forums literally they have a list this long of, you got to do this for this. And that was what was always terrible about hydroponic. I mean, it just is complicated, confusing, and we've made it simple. One size fits all. The primary thing is that when you're growing indoors without Tower Garden mineral blend, you're going to be at a full strength nutrient solution. And we do talk about that in the Tower Garden 101. What that is, that would be 20 mils of concentrate A, 20 mils of concentrate B, per gallon of water.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, we're keeping on time just like we need to for these questions. Okay. So the next two questions, I'm going to break it down. It's a what is this? And so
Okay.
we'll start with like, what is this on my Tower Garden? So a lot of times it's, there's another, the mineral deposits that will happen a lot. We're getting a lot of questions of what is this and why is it on my tower? And I want to talk about how it's not necessarily a bad thing, and maybe give a few pointers on what we need to do to ensure that those things don't pop up.
That's such a great question.
just to keep everybody out there, because I know when we start talking about this, we're gonna get hit with a bunch of questions. We're gonna focus on the what is this on my Tower Garden part first, then we'll move into the what is this on my plants.
Okay.
So if you'll hit those for me.
Yeah, the mineral thing I'll address real quickly. So all hydroponic nutrient solutions are, they're all the minerals, especially with the Tower Garden mineral blend. I can speak to that. It's everything the plant needs to grow. A lot of trace minerals that are important to human health are also in there, and they're in the water. Now, one of the things we do with a one-size-fits-all fertilizer, we use an extraordinary amount of calcium. Calcium is so important to our health. It's the building block of all cell walls. So a lot of cheaper fertilizers don't have a lot of calcium. Is an expensive component, and a lot of cheaper fertilizers won't have that. So we actually have a lot of calcium in our nutrient solution. And whether it's our solution or another solution, is over time, just like say, those of you that have hard water, I did a talk in Phoenix last year, and you know what I'm talking about. Inland California, those on the East Coast are a little bit more privileged, but if you're in the Midwest, up north, the West, you got very hard water. And so you'll notice around your showers, around your faucets, you get some scaling. And a lot of times that's mainly calcium, and there can be some other minerals in there. Well, the same thing happens on the Tower Garden. As water's running, it'll lay down a mineral, and then it'll lay down the next mineral, and it can kind of actually crawl up a little bit. And so because our nutrient solution is rich, we will sometimes see, like right here, and I think you can see it on mine just a little bit. I probably can't see it on the Zoom video, but there's just a little bit tiny right there. So all that is calcium, not chemical. It's a calcium type mineral deposit. Now, one of the things I've learned, Katie, over time is that when you start seeing that, if you actually take vinegar on a little towel, it'll wipe right off if it's just emerging. One of the other things I would mention is that how we put together our Tower Garden and how we operate it will impact that mineral deposit. And this is the same for any hydroponic system out there. So magically, we do have Tower Garden home instructions that people don't read. They take it out of the box and they put together, and the Tower Garden is so fun and simple that it does go together. But sometimes some simple things are overlooked. For example, when we clip these pots together, we want them nice and firm. We want that seal between each pot nice and tight, not loose. Okay. So for people that have it more loose, they're going to have more of a problem, because with our vertical aeroponics, some of that water is raining down, and as it rains down, it hits plastic parts, it breaks apart and atomizes and creates a fine mist. And that fine mist works its way to some of the cracks and different things. So with high flow aeroponics, we're getting both trickling water and mist. And so that way we're getting really good coverage over the roots. But we also, if we haven't built our tower correctly, we can get a little bit of leaking or things like that out there. So simple things: put your tower together correctly, read your instructions, and these just snap together super easy. And sometimes even here, I have one of those little kids hammers, and I just do a little tap on that center stem, Katie, and I get those, nothing hard. I'm not hammering a nail into the wall. I just give it a nice little tap, and I get such a nice, firm, solid snap. And I like to, I like to do things that are quick. So that's all that is. Nothing to worry about. But if you don't like it, like I said, a little bit of vinegar, when you see it, it just literally wipes right off. It's not going to wipe right off if, you've been growing like in this tower over here for 9 months. Then it takes a little bit more, scrubbing, or you leave the vinegar on there a little bit longer. But anything that would remove scale would remove a calcium type mineral deposit. Now, the other thing that can happen over time is, say, algae on the grow cubes, and this is a lot of people get really concerned about this one, Katie. Here's a typical seed starter kit. And one of the things that I mentioned is that, when I grow indoors, I like to start in a clean, sterile environment. I like to start my own plants. I like to make sure if my tower, say if I had a flex and it was outside, I brought it in, that I've bleached it and I've triple rinsed it every part. I always like starting off clean and fresh indoors. Now, one of the things that people do, as soon as they see a seed sprout, they give it some fertilizer. And believe it or not, I only fertilize my plants twice before they go in the tower. And that's kind of how I keep my seedlings algae free. And you can do that because inside a seed is everything the plant needs to grow for that first beginning. Okay. So when that plant germinates, I almost starve my plants. I let them all grow up and get healthy. And as soon as they all start looking a little bit yellow, I say, okay, we're about 10 days in. I'm going to give you your first shot of fertilizer. And then they might get one more, sometimes just one, before they go into the tower. And that really keeps the algae down. Now, does the algae harm the plant? No, it doesn't harm the plant. And it's a very normal thing in the environment. If there was an algae there, it'd mean that we're probably using a lot of harsh chemicals or something like that. It's a very natural thing. But one of the things that the algae can do, if you have a lot of it, whenever you go shopping at the store, even in the middle of winter, those fruits and vegetables were grown in a farm field, and a lot of time you get those little fruit, gnat-looking things. They're little, mostly fruit flies, and they kind of feed on dead organic matter. They're going to be in onions and garlic and things like that. They're really common. You bring them home, they're in your house, they fly around, and those guys love algae. They feed on it. So if you look at your tower and you start seeing some black things fly around, they're not emerging from your tower. They're not emerging from your seed packet. They came from your kitchen. And so one of the techniques that I have used is, you've got this, I ordered these on Amazon, but you can get them in a lot of places. These are a mouse glue board, and you can also buy them for pests, but these are readily available online. And the center of these are yellow, and insects are attracted to yellow, and they're sticky. And you'll notice I've got some bugs on mine. And so what I will do is I will go ahead and put this up at the top of the tower. And I'll even, if you've got pets around, I'll even put a hole in there and twist tie it, because you don't want your pets getting stuck in something like that. So you really got to be careful if you have pets, and putting that somewhere where it's safe. But that'll catch any of those little buggers flying around. So hopefully I gave you a tip on how to not only catch those little gnats that might be around. Again, this is relevant, for if you have house plants, if you have to container gardens and you're over fertilizing them, and you get algae growing on top, those little flies are going to go onto your house plants. So you really have to pay attention. If you have a lot of house plants, make sure that's not bringing anything around your tower garden as well. So hopefully I answered those two questions for you, Katie.
Yeah, definitely helpful. Let's go back though, because you did mention when you start your seeds that you really only fertilize twice. Can you explain that a little bit more, as what you mean by fertilizer? It's
yeah. So you bet. So I have a grow light right over here on my workbench, and so I leave that on all the time, and that sits about 6 inches above these seedlings. So I start a really nice compact seedling. And algae's kind of everywhere. So if you have fertilizer and you have light, you can get algae growth. So when the plant's small, it's not, those plants in there, that rock wool really isn't being exposed to the light, Katie, because it's got leaves all over it. But when you're starting them out, I see people using the Tower Grown Mineral Blend as our recommended fertilizer, and they start adding that Tower Grown Mineral Blend right away. And that's what I recommend, is just using fresh water until these plants till you're at about 10 days. And some of your plants, especially like kale and arugula, are going to look a little bit yellow, and that's okay. That's just a little bit of iron shortage. And so when I add that Tower Garden mineral blend, I just, again, like I said, I just do it once or twice, and that fertilizer is going to promote growth, and those plants are going to, you'll see a big jump after you fertilize. You'll also see that green starting to kick in. So I don't mind algae. What I have an issue with, and I think what a lot of people do, is that if you're fertilizing every day, it gets thick and green and slimy, like you'd see at the edge of a pond or something. And we don't want that. Because again, like I said, it's not going to harm the plant. But if it gets too thick and slimy, sometimes it can suffocate the crown. So that's just a technique we use. Whether it's a homeowner or a commercial farmer, that's how we're always going to treat our seedlings. We don't over fertilize them out of the chute, and that really helps keep the algae low.
Perfect. That definitely helps. I'll be the first to admit that I am sometimes lazy and sometimes in a hurry and want to get my seedlings in the tower sooner rather than later. And I have noticed that when I do that and they have access to that mineral blend, that I will see some algae growth on the top of my rock.
And one of the things I mentioned, the things, we've done several of these national Zoom calls, and keep in mind, really, I'm a degreed horticulturist, excuse me. I've been growing hydroponically for 30 years. Passionate about what I do, and I'm giving you tips that are fun and simple. There are many ways to garden, many techniques, different people use different things, and all those probably work. So just keep in mind, I want to make sure that people don't get stressed out, like, oh my God, I was doing it wrong. Katie, I've been there. I've fertilized them every day, and I had a lot of algae, and I still had a great, beautiful head of lettuce. So let's just keep this in perspective, and we're not talking about end of the world things. We're just talking about, tips and techniques that slowly nudge us step by step into a more relaxed, better, simpler way of gardening.
And to follow up, I will see the algae growth, but it sure did not slow down my eating what was growing. It didn't stop me. It didn't stop me.
I've seen some people in forums, think that you would think the plague just came into their tower about algae, and it's like, well, you're way over stressed out about it. But I don't like those little. When I'm growing indoors, outdoors I could care less. But when I'm growing indoors, I don't personally care for little flies, little fruit flies coming around. And again, I've seen it in potted house plants and stuff. So that little sticky trap works really great to collect those buggers for sure.
So speaking of little flies going around, let's move over to the what is this on my plants piece, and this is something that I'll kind of put a little bit more into. I've asked this question a couple times, and I'll take a picture and I'm sending it to Steve or to Holly and like zoom in and what is this? And I tend to struggle when I'm growing indoors with aphids. So I know a lot of times that's the what is this on my plant thing for me, and it was frustrating because I kept feeling like I was doing something wrong, and it took a couple conversations with both Steve and Holly just really reminding me that there are a lot of different things. I do have other house plants. I do have plants growing in the dirt, different things throughout my house. Not to mention, I also have pets. So what about that can make something beyond my plants in my tower garden?
Yeah, absolutely. Really glad you asked this one because, you just made a good point there. If you were to get a bug or something, don't feel bad. Nature is nature. So one of the beautiful things of growing plants like this, we're not using harmful chemicals. We're growing highly, again, this Tower Garden mineral blend is clinically proven by the University of Mississippi to be, some of the most nutritious food on earth. They compared it with some of the best soil conditions on earth. And so it's highly nutritious. And we're not using a bunch of harmful chemicals and things like that. So of course, bugs are normal. They're a normal part of the ecosystem environment. It's really when they get out of balance. So here's what I can share with you for indoor growing. One of the things that whether we're growing in any hydroponic system or potted vegetables indoors or houseplant, when you are growing indoors without the wind and out the direct sun, and the sunlight's full of really high levels of UV. And what plants do is when they're exposed to UV, in order to prevent themselves from getting sunburn like people, they develop a really thick cutin. And then the wind's blowing them. So they develop the plant outdoors is going to be a thicker structure. I mean, I'm always blown away by how I can just, go and pinch off a kale leaf and, it almost snaps off, or a lettuce leaf over here. Outdoors, it's a little bit, it's a little bit more of a pull to get to bring out the plant. And that's just because, they're in a more softer, caring environment. But with that comes a plant that would be a little bit more susceptible to, again, in any type of indoor system under artificial light where it's not getting beat up by the outdoor weather, Katie, that plant might be a little bit more susceptible to some of those things. So what we do when we grow indoors is, especially if you're, I know there's people on this call today that you brought your tower garden, it might have been growing outdoors. And again, I'm going to encourage all of you on this Zoom call. Katie's going to provide that link, and it's readily available on the Tower to Table Facebook group. Go to the Tower Garden 101 that Steve and I just did a couple months ago on our national Zoom call, and we talk in great detail because I know there's going to be questions coming up. We cover this in great detail on how to sterilize your tower, how to bring it in. And again, we don't want it to sound complicated, but at the same time, I mean, think about this. Everyone has their favorite brand of car, and there's some brands out there like Toyota and Honda, for example, that have great reliability records, and they never stop. They keep ticking. But you know what? They've got to have that clean oil change and that clean filter change and the right tire pressure. And if you do all those things, they work good. But if you miss those things, even the greatest things can have challenges. So what I like to do is when I grow indoors, I like to start sterile and clean, meaning that if I was using, at least once a year, I've thoroughly bleached my tower. And when I say bleach, I don't mean a drop of bleach, and I don't mean vinegar. Vinegar will not sterilize a tower garden. It will not penetrate mineral deposit quickly. I use bleach. And I talk about that in Tower Garden 101. I scrub everything down, I clean it, I rinse it, because different, lizards, frogs, something can get in, there's all kinds of things, a bad seed. A lot of these heirloom companies, Katie, the heirloom seed companies do not regulate their seeds very well. Unfortunately, love what they're doing, but they're not being tested for virus. They're not being tested. They came from a field. It's one of the reasons I've liked our seed supplier at Tower Garden. I love Johnny's Seeds because I know they have a really high quality control, but there's different ways diseases and things can get into your tower. So I love starting off clean. Okay. And then I love starting, my seedlings are started right next to me over here under a little grow light. I know where my seeds came from. I know where they're started, and I don't bring anything in. So when I think about placing an indoor tower garden home, outdoors, anywhere you see a weed growing outside, Katie, there is going to be an aphid on it. There's going to be a spider mite. There's going to be a whitefly. You can take your hand lens and go look at the underside of any broadweed leaf, not grass. Broadweed leaf are host to all kinds of vegetable pests. So I see people take their dog or they open the door for the dog and he runs out in the rose bush and he's literally got aphids on his fur. He comes in and sits down by the tower. And I said, where did that aphid come? Did that come from my seedling supplier? Well, it's possible, but probably not. It probably came from you working out in your yard or something like that. So what I like to do is, for me, all my tower garden stuff, I wake up, I take a shower, I harvest my tower, make a smoothie in the morning, and I'll even, if I know I'm going to go out and work in my yard, I'll actually even harvest my salad. I don't want to go out and work in my yard and bring bugs in because they're, people are vectors, that aphids and mites and things will stick to your shirt. So where you place your tower can be very important. Is it by a patio door you open all the time, where there's weeds outside, or where your pets are coming in and out or something like that? So be really mindful of those things, because the easiest way to control a bug or a disease is to never let it start in the first place. And that's the easiest. So I've been growing indoors for years, and only once have I had aphids, and I know how that happened. And I said, okay, I'm going to clean up my tower. I'm done. I'm just going to sterilize. And, insects have a way of, they can drop an egg on the floor. I've taken entomology and plant pathology, and it's not just the tower, it can be the area around the tower. So we want to make sure everything stays, really clean. And also think about, like Katie mentioned, she has houseplants. So most house plants aren't host to vegetable pests, but some of them, like ficus trees, for example, can have spider mites on them. And so again, I just like to make sure if I'm going to have a tower garden indoors, I don't have it by anything indoors or outdoors that would be contaminated. Now, there's I think someone sent me, they say I've got a spot on my leaf, or I've got these yellow spots or black spots or something like that, or I have powdery. I think a rare occasion I have powdery mildew. When I grow indoors, like I said, I know where my seeds come from, and again, you got to be really cautious of heirloom seed companies of literally when they take a crop and they grow it into a seed, that crop is old and aged. And if they're not managing pests or diseases correctly, and a lot of small seed companies are not, those spores are literally in the seed packet. So you want to be careful on where you get your seeds from, especially with diseases. And again, I'm growing inside a house that doesn't have anything other than my food crops. So I'm not introducing powdery mildew or anything. Like, these plants stay perfectly clean. So that's one of the, eradication is one of the best ways to manage pests. And I think of this, having this background in this training, I get pretty serious about this. Did you do every part? Did you do it thoroughly? Is your inside clean? It's like really taking the time to slow down. And this is for any gardening, whether I'm outdoor gardening, really thinking about in detail, your environment if you have these issues. Now, if you do have any of these issues, just for sake of time on this call, again, I'm going to turn you back to that Tower Garden 101. And also at the towergarden.com, if you click on blog, and then you can there's a little green magnifying glass inside the blog. You click on that and you type in 6 simple secrets for a pest-free garden. And in there, I talk about all of my favorite organic sprays and tips and techniques, not just what I talked about now, but a lot more tips and techniques that we use to keep these guys out of our garden. But one of the biggest thing on managing pests is I see people, Katie, they fall in love with their tower and they are not going to get rid of this beautiful dill that's flowering or something like that. And when you have an overgrown jungle, when you have a places in your tower where the sunlight's not hitting and the breeze isn't blowing through, I guarantee those, it's like mice inside a wall. Those insects love that shade. The plants are weaker, nobody's bothering them, and they kind of almost emerge from your tower from the inside out, or any, again, container garden for that matter. So when you look at my towers there, you'll see, there's that saying, use it or lose it. I keep my towers cut, and if something's getting too big and I can't use it, I put it in a bag and I hang it on my neighbor's door. And I can tell you, I've got a lot of friends in my neighborhood, Katie.
That's what I'm so guilty of. Is I'm so proud of what I've grown, and I don't want to cut it. Like, I want it to keep growing. That, and I know that is one of the hardest things for me. And I do.
We got this. Think about this. We've got a vertical condominium, and how many people on this call today live in an apartment building or condominium? And how many of you would be happy if your neighbor next door to you blew down their wall and invaded your space? Chaos occurs, and that's what happens in a tower. This is a vertical. The magic of the Tower Garden home is that we are growing 32 plants on a 24-inch footprint, so we can replace an end table, a lamp, or anything and fit this inside a home very comfortably. But we have to think about also keeping those plants happy. And so if you let a plant hang around and get enormous, then you can kind of expect those kind of things to happen. Save that for your house plants. Grow your beautiful ficus tree or your hanging philodendron, but on Tower Garden, use it and or share some with your friends and encourage them. I have neighbors that said, I've been giving them produce and I have to be careful because now they're like, they start asking me, do you have that kale? Do you have some more of that kale? We're going to, and I'm like, it just doesn't, you can't get that in the grocery store. It tastes so good and clean and doesn't have chemicals on it. So that's giving away is a great way to share the message of health and wellness and growing local food, Katie. I mean, we talk about all these environmental issues. One of the largest carbon footprints on planet Earth is shipping food from all around the globe, from California to Orlando, 2,000 miles, when you can literally tower to table in 10 footsteps and eliminate all that food transportation and food carbon footprint and packages and wrappers and all that stuff. So it's a big deal to me. And I think we should be inspiring people to do any kind of garden at home. It's a real positive thing for your health and the health of the planet.
For sure. Well, that's we're actually right. We're right on time. We said we were going to try to keep this one to 45 minutes. And so
Yep.
we're there. I think we covered a whole lot. There are still questions in the chat. I've made notes on some of those, and we're going to send out follow-up information. So you're going to get an email, just a follow-up email from Zoom tomorrow with a little bit more detail in it and where to find stuff. We're going to gather some of these resources and get them all packaged up. So we'll share this information out via email. We will also share it in that Tower to Table #Tower Garden Facebook group that we've mentioned. I think I also threw that out there in the chat for folks. So we'll try to address as many of the questions that we didn't hit over on the side. But before we go, I've sat here for 45 minutes watching you talk and keep getting mesmerized by the towers behind you. So before we go, can we just hear a little bit about what you're growing on those towers? And okay, you did mention that you make sure that you use it or you get it out of there. So do you even buy any produce at the grocery store because of all that you have growing back there? Or, you know, how many people are you feeding with those towers?
So we have a family of 4, and then we feed a bunch of neighbors. So right now we have 3 indoor tower garden homes, and I have some are in the Tower Garden 101. I share this, by the way. We kind of theme them. One's a juicing tower and a salad tower behind me, and an older juicing tower here. And sometimes just plants get mixed up, Katie. I had some empty spots, and so I had some extra lettuce seedlings, so I threw them in on the juicing tower, and then they get replaced because they're a little bit shorter than some of the kale and things like that. But the idea is that I love to grow a diversity of colors, flavors, and textures, and that's a really use the rainbow to color your plate for optimal health. So I try to get all that multicolored chard, and parsley over here is a wonderful blood cleanser, and it's high in chlorophyll. And so all these things that we focus on our health and wellness plan. We travel a lot for Tower Garden, even though it's COVID. There's other things that we have to be on the road, and we do so. Especially in the winter, if I'm going to be focused on indoor growing, for example, not outdoor, I will focus on maybe getting some organic tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that from peppers and things from the store, things that can sit a long time. But I would say all of our lettuces, leafy greens, and herbs, we not only juice every day or do a smoothie every day, we have a salad every day, and we're giving away produce. But one of the things that I love about multiple towers is that part of pest control is just not letting your garden. And again, guys, this is great for any garden. We don't want our garden to get old, and you get so addicted to this good produce that when you take your tower down, you miss it for a couple of weeks before the next one gets going. So I always kind of like to cycle my towers. One is older and one is newer. So when I take down the older tower, I never run out of produce. So I might be down to just 1 or 2 towers on a low end, and then up to 3 towers indoors on a high end. And again, there's many people that just use 1 tower, and that works fine too. But I just, I really encourage you, if this is your first time growing, pick a theme. Think of things that will grow quickly and that you're going to use daily.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to join today and answer some of these questions. We love doing this. We're going to do this more often and get the word out. And so we can go ahead and get some of these calls scheduled throughout the year so that we can just, provide some updates and some additional information. We are working to get a date scheduled for February. As soon as we have that date confirmed, we'll get the word out for everyone in the various channels so that you can go ahead and get that put on your calendar. And just as a reminder, the stuff that we talked about today, we've recorded this webinar. We're going to share the recording with everyone who has registered, and we'll also post more information in the Tower to Table #Tower Garden Facebook group so that you can get this information and share it out and even use it beyond just today. So again, thanks for being here, and I'm sure that I'll be hitting you up with some additional questions in the next couple of days, and we'll finalize our topic for our chat in February.
Well, thank you for all you're doing, Katie. And I know based on our request last year when Steve and I were doing these, people that couldn't make it or were out of town wanted a follow-up email. And so really hats off to Katie for, you guys are going to be blown away by what's in store for 2021. Katie's a big part of that behind
Pressure.
the scenes, making the magic happen. So I think we're all getting an email in a day, right, Katie, or something?
Yes, everyone that is registered, at the very least, you are going to get an email tomorrow with kind of next steps and where to go. And we'll continue to follow up with additional information after that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I know our beautiful Tower Garnet community out there is going to appreciate that, and appreciate you all. Stay healthy and well. And we're hopefully rounding this corner, getting towards a healthier 2021.